presence. Why is it not going? Oh, there it goes. Okay. All right. All right. Well, again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, so much for being here tonight. I'll just mention again, if you didn't grab a comment card, please grab one. There's a variety of ways you can comment on this, and we're going to get into that later on in the presentation. So tonight's agenda, we're here to inform you about this study here in St. Tammany Parish. And like I said, the draft report is available for review until September 6th, and it provides information on how the tentatively selected plan was selected and describes the details of the tentatively selected plan and how the study is complying with the National Environmental Policy Act. Our main goal is to hear from you this evening. We'd like to hear your thoughts on this plan, and this is an opportunity for you, as well as other government agencies and partners, to have their voices heard. So here's just a little bit more background on the we're going to provide background on the study, updates, and alternative analysis. The optimized, tentatively selected plan. We're going to look for your comments, and your participation is encouraged. I would ask that you hold all questions, because there's a good chance your question may get answered in the presentation. And then after, we have tables set up where you can talk directly to the subject matter experts about your particular question. So today, now I'm going to turn it over to Colonel Cullen Jones, the commander, 65th commander of the New Orleans District of the Army Corps of Engineers.
And good evening, everybody, and thanks again for joining us tonight. As you heard, I am Colonel Cullen Jones. I'm the 65th commander of the New Orleans District, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And we are so glad that you took your evening here to join us to hear about the St. Tammany Feasibility Study. But most importantly, as you heard from Renee, get your thoughts and comments. This is the first of two public meetings that we're going to be having here. And we understand the urgency to help provide risk reduction for this region and for this parish. And it's through these types of dialogues that's going to enable us to be able to present an effective federal plan. As you all probably realize, the goal of the St. Tammany study is to develop alternatives to reduce flood damages caused by hurricane and rainfall events across the parish. Tonight, you're going to hear what we call the tentatively selected plan, but most importantly, hearing those comments through the discussions that we have at the booths later on. We need to hear what you think. This tentatively selected plan is going to provide both structural and non-structural solutions to reduce that risk throughout this area. That includes everything from creating flood walls, levees, channel work, and structural elevation or flood proofing of areas throughout this parish. This is huge. This is a $4.5 billion opportunity to reduce risk to life and property for our fellow citizens in this area. Just to give you an example, one of the key aspects is going to be an 18-mile levee system located here in Slidell. You see some of the work that we're doing for the West Shore Lake Pontchartrain Hurricane Storm Damage Risk Reduction Project in La Place. That's of the similar scope that's going to have the opportunity to occur here. The study was initiated in January of 2020 through a cost share agreement with our non-federal sponsor, the Coastal Protection Restoration Authority. And it's that team of teams that's been developing it throughout. Tonight's meeting is about the federal plan. But I want you all to realize that this is not the one-stop shop for risk reduction in St. Tammany Parish. This is the start of a system of systems to develop comprehensive flood risk mitigation, working alongside efforts that the state and the locals are going to provide through CPRA, St. Tammany Parish, and the Levee Board. CPRA was nice enough to set up a booth here tonight as well, where you're going to have an opportunity to see those overlapping systems of systems that will provide you the risk reduction that you need in this area. And just as it is with a system of system, it's going to be accomplished through that team of teams you heard throughout. It's important, I'm excited the fact that we're going to have councilmen here tonight to include Jake Airy and James Davis. Really appreciate you. We have Suzanne Krieger from the levy board here on site, but also important, just to think the level of importance here. We also have congressional representation and greatly appreciate Robin Krieger from Congressman Scalise's office. So tonight you'll hear the plan, but at the same time, you'll hear how it is tied in through that team of teams alongside CPRA. And one of my great teammates that's here tonight with us is Brian Lazina, the Chief of Planning for the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority, who is my great honor to turn it over to next. So Brian, come on up. Thank you very much, everybody, and excited for the discussions this evening.
All right, let's see if I can stand in one spot here and do this. But good evening, everybody. As Colonel Jones mentioned, I'm Brian Lazina. I currently serve as the Chief of Planning and Research for the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority. And for those of you that aren't familiar with what that is, basically we are the state agency charged with just that, the protection of our citizens from flood risk, mostly hurricane, storm surge, and of course the restoration of our environment. Where we come in here is we're going to talk about a federal plan, and Colonel Jones mentioned that this is a federal plan, but that federal plan, these federal plans often need a non-federal sponsor. We at CPRA are filling that role on behalf of the state of Louisiana. So like you heard Colonel Jones mentioned, we walk along the same path. We try to make sure that the needs of the state are taken into account in these plans, and that's our role here. If we are so lucky, and I hope to get to construction on this, we'll also provide some of that construction funding on behalf of the state of Louisiana. So a little bit of personal comment. First of all, this is was home for me. I grew up here. So I hope you hear in the sense of my voice how pleased I am that we have such a federal presence and a federal look to address the needs of St. Tammany Parish residents. Like Colonel Jones mentioned, there's no one-stop shop. There's no just one thing that can reduce risk for everybody, excuse me. This is a system of systems, and I think you'll see some of that a little later if you can speak with us with CPRA. But this plan, as was mentioned, represents risk reduction in a meaningful way for tens of thousands of St. Tammany's residents and structures on there. That's a game changer, folks. And I know, again, we don't see one-stop shop, but a $4 billion+ authorization is just a game changer. And so with a deep sense of pride, I'm with you here this evening with a lot of thanks to Colonel Jones and his staff, and of course, Team CPRA for working this plan through. I think you'll see, and I hope you can understand the hard work that went into that. So we mentioned system of systems, and you'll see in the federal plan a lot of different things here with as was mentioned, pumps, flood walls, levee systems, non-structural risk reduction, basically home elevations and flood proofing. But what you don't see in this plan, I think you'll find in the state's coastal master plan that complements this. And that's everything from restoration of the Chandelier Islands all the way into looking at potential surge barriers in Lake Pontchartrain to keep the surge out of Lake Pontchartrain. Now, we'll do everything in our power to make those things come true and work in synergy with this particular plan. So again, no one-stop shops, but that's why we have this system of systems in place. And so lastly, I just wanted to say thank you for being here and your input. These are plans for you. This is a plan for St. Tammany Parish and its residents. So your input, the importance of you being here is paramount to this plan moving forward. And that's going to be very, very important as we look to authorize this plan, ultimately fund this plan, and then really, most importantly, get this thing on the ground and reduce risk for the residents of St. Tammany Parish. So thank you all for being here tonight, and I look forward to speaking with you after the presentation.
Thank you, Colonel Jones and Mr. Lazina, for those remarks. Right now, we're going to talk about the National Environmental Policy Act, and to do that, we have Sandy Stiles.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Kind of some nice weather we're having tonight, huh? At least it's not the heat. So got to be careful what you ask for, right? So this next couple of slides are not why you're here necessarily. I know you want to really get into what the project is all about, but part of the reason why we're here is a federal law called the National Environmental Policy Act, which requires federal agencies to consider the environmental impacts of their actions on not only the natural environment, but the human environment as well. And these public meetings are a part of that requirement to be compliant with the law. Can you change it or do I change it?
There's the clicker something.
This? Can I just hit it? All right, there we go. Technical difficulties, right? So part of what we do under the National Environmental Policy Act is we either develop an environmental assessment if we determine that the likelihood of impacts are going to be minor, or we develop an environmental impact statement, which is a larger environmental document that gets into it's if you consider your impacts might be significant. So you would prepare an environmental impact statement. So part of what is in that document is the purpose. You know, what are we trying to achieve with that, with the study and in the report, and then the need. You know, why is this federal project needed? Purpose here is to get you guys some relief from flooding. The need is flood risk reduction. So big part of that NEPA document, the heart of it, I think, is the alternatives formulations and all the things that you can consider to develop that federal project, that system that you want, the various measures and different ways of accomplishing the same task. So that's the alternatives. We consider the infected environment as it looks today, and come up with some baseline conditions. And then we project out into the future, 50 years with the Corps of Engineers. We do a 50-year period of analysis, and we take a look at the no action alternative. What would the environment look like if we did nothing? And then we compare that to what it would look like with our various alternatives that we determine to be reasonable to consider. And we do an impact analysis on that. So what are the various alternatives? What are the impacts going to have to the biology, the wetlands, the trees, your national parks, to the human environment, to your homes, to your businesses, and things that are important to you. So, and this is just more of what I just said. And, it was passed by President Nixon in 1970. And how we're complying with the law is by developing the environmental impact statement. And part of that is this public meeting to hear your comments. Public involvement is a really big part of the National Environmental Policy Act. It gives you an opportunity to have a role in the development of the project. You hear from us early on, we let you know that we have a federal project, and we get your input on what you believe the issues to be. And then we move forward, we do our study, develop the alternatives and our impact analysis, and then we put it back out because we want to hear from you what you think about the plan, what your comments are, and how we might improve it or make some changes. So it's important in the process. So environmental compliance, in addition to the National Environmental Policy Act, we have many environmental laws and regulations that we also have to comply with. And some of them are the Clean Water Act, Coastal Zone Management Act, Fish and Wildlife Coordination Act, how the project impacts your threatened and endangered species and whatnot. And historic properties is also a consideration. Okay, and a part of this process, as said many times already, is we're out, the document is out there on the website, available for you to review. It's out for 45 days for review and comment. It closes September 6th. So if you have any questions or need anything while it's out, and sometimes folks would prefer to have a hard copy or something like that, feel free to contact us and let us know. You want to see a hard copy, you don't want to look at it on your computer. We're available. We can get hard copies to you. So, all right.
All right, well, thank you, Sandy, for that part of the presentation. Now we're going to turn it over to Amy Dixon, who's the project manager for this particular project.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Amy Dixon. I am the project manager, as Renee said, for this feasibility study. Just want to say thank you to Sandy, a subject matter expert here to talk to you tonight. She's been on our project for the duration. We have several other team members in the back, and we look forward to answering your questions. So most of us in this room, including most of our team members, have been in this parish quite some time. We all live in the parish and know what we see every day on the ground. This map that you see on the screen was supplied to us by St. Tammany Parish government, and we thank them for that. But it definitely demonstrates the areas that we've seen the most repeated losses in the area due to flooding. You also see on the screen a good bit of blue. All of that blue is the intricate waterways that we know and love, the ones we live on, the ones we fish on, but they are rampant in this parish, which means that flood risk around the parish is relatively high. So Congress came to us and said, we would like you to do a study. And they authorized us to do that study in the WIN Act of 2016. We were funded in the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2018, and we were authorized to do a 3-year study. They gave us $3 million to look at the entire St. Tammany Parish and develop alternatives to reduce that flood risk. We all know that St. Tammany has both coastal storm and riverine flooding. We've seen Katrina effects. We've also seen the floods of 2016 out in the western part of the parish. So we took all of those considerations into this study moving forward. We did go back to our chain of command, our vertical chain all the way up to headquarters, and ask for more time and funding. So our study is actually going to take about 4.5 years total and will be a little over $4.5 million total cost. And we really did that to thoroughly analyze and produce the best tentatively selected plan that we could. So we kicked off this study in 2020. We have come out a few times to the public, as Sandy mentioned. We've also spoken to several groups and small homeowner groups around the parish. We had one of our major milestones called the agency decision milestone back in August of 21. And at that point, we let our team know that we did select the tentatively selected plan, but thought that we could use a little bit more time and money to execute. So as you zoom forward to today, we're now in the public comment period where we're bringing to you the work that we've done on the study and asking for comment. While we're asking you for comment, we are also getting comment from our agency. We had a meeting just today, actually, with agency members and other subject matter experts from across the Corps, all the way in Portland and all the way to the Northeast. Other folks are looking at this within our agency to tell us what they think and pass along any comments on what we've done. In addition, we're going through a policy review at our district headquarters. You'll see on this screen, we're looking at a chief's report, which is basically our final milestone in May of 2024. And we'll talk about that one in a little bit. So our study was really to reduce risk to the parish. When you have events like the 2016 flood or Katrina, you really, truly, the need of the parish is demonstrated in the damages that are present. So what we're trying to do is help the community reduce that risk, hopefully reduce those damages over the next 50 years, which is our study time frame, and then increase that community resiliency. Because I know most of us have been here quite a long time and we plan to stay. So at the beginning of our study, we started coordination with our non-federal sponsor, CPRA. We also, though, have coordinated with many governmental stakeholders, including those national natural resource agencies Sandy mentioned, but also the local levee district, the parish government, and city officials. There we go. So when we started the study, we had over 200 alternatives. Those are not listed here, but they are listed in the back and online on that report. 200 alternatives for the parish of St. Tammany to reduce that risk. We went all the way up to Sun and thought about a levee up there and all the way down to the Wrigley's barrier and pretty much anything you can think of in between. No idea was thrown out, all were considered, which is really a great testament to the team and the effort that they put in. We narrowed it down to about 40 alternatives to really give some deeper thought, and that was at the alternative milestone. And we broke those 40 alternatives out into the groupings that you see on the screen. So it was sources of flooding at that point, whether you were in the Chifuncta River and seeing flooding there, whether you were seeing storm surge in Mandeville at the lakefront, or flooding from the Pearl River communities. These are just a few of the many criteria that were reviewed to analyze those alternatives. You can see in the draft report, there's extensive documentation on how these factors and others impacted our decision and each individual alternative that was on the previous screen. So that got us to our tentatively selected plan. When we previously came out to the public, we had 4 measures in that tentatively selected plan. We now have 3. A smaller project, channel work in the Slidell area, was screened during our further analysis because when it was modeled by our team, it didn't produce the risk reduction or the benefits that we thought it would. So we now have 3 components: the west-south Slidell levee, Mile Branch channel improvements, and a non-structural plan that will floodproof or elevate homes and businesses throughout the parish. And like Colonel Jones mentioned, it's a $4.5 billion plan with a benefit to cost ratio of 2.4. We're going to start with Mile Branch. It's the smallest feature of the plan. It's less than $100 million. We're basically going to deepen Mile Branch out in Covington through clearing and grubbing. We do have many, I'm going to go to the next slide for you. We have many bridge replacements. It is a highly populated area down there in Covington. So while this is a small project with a small footprint, it will impact almost 300 residences and businesses. So many of us are here tonight to talk about the west-south Slidell levee. It is an 18-mile feature. I have a couple of slides that will break it down into like the west side and the east side, but this 18-mile feature will be at its highest, 21 feet. But it will taper as you go inland. Obviously, the greater storm surge is towards the lake, so that's where the highest features will be. You see on the screen, and we'll talk about that extensively in a few minutes, but those purple dots are structures that will be eligible for that non-structural plan, which means they will be eligible for home raising or business floodproofing. So on the west side, the 2 different color greens that you see. The original green line was where we thought we would terminate the original levee about 2 years ago. When we modeled that levee, we determined that in the future it will need to be longer. So the levee was extended on the west side, accommodating that dark green line, and now it is above Highway 190. You'll see in pink the Big Branch Wildlife Refuge, and you can kind of see the levee and floodwall system go along the interface of that wet Big Branch Wildlife Refuge, and then the populated side north of the levee. The red on the screen is flood wall. Anywhere there would be a pump station, flood gate, vehicle gate, you're going to have a flood wall around it. Okay, as we go east, you'll see right at Highway 11, our levee is basically the same footprint as the Oak Harbor levee. Then we travel to the Lakeshore levee. Then we go up and connect with the Kings Point levees. That impact that Sandy talked about of how our levee impacts the environment, with a levee on the ground, you're looking at less construction impacts, but you're also looking at significantly less environmental impacts by using structures that are already there. So when we go to construct, if Congress authorizes and funds us, we'll go out, we'll inspect those levees, we'll make engineering decisions about their fitness, and then get them up to the federal standard. They will become a part of the levee alignment that's in the federal plan. Then in the levee will go up to 190, and it will swing slightly west, where we tie into Interstate 10. Interstate 10 at that point is at the height the levee needs to be. So we're basically utilizing Interstate 10 as part of the levee alignment, which again reduces construction impacts and cost. Like I said, it's an 18.5-mile levee, and we're looking at 8 pump stations, multiple culverts, sluice gates, lift gates, vehicular gates. All of the details, the engineering details, can be found in the main report, but also in the engineering appendix. So if you have more questions on things like where are we getting our borrow from, or how that levee that you saw impacts the road that would be an exit from your home, you can find that in the documents. Okay, the third feature of our plan is a non-structural plan. And what the non-structural plan really means is we're going to be elevating homes or residences and flood-proofing businesses. Businesses will be flood-proofed up to 3 feet. It's an engineering standard that they are not flood-proofed any higher than that, but they'll be flood-proofed up to 3 feet. If you look, though, in our documentation, especially the economics appendix, you'll see the data sets that went into this analysis. We used existing data, including the National Structure Inventory, and we used different data sets to determine ground elevations. With such a short time frame and such a small amount of money at this time, we did not do surveys on the ground. Traditionally, that's done in a later phase in the study. So we would come out to homes or businesses and survey them in the future. What Ben in the back, Ben Logan, is our economics subject matter expert. He's been on our team the duration. He'll be in the back to answer questions. But basically, you took the foundational height of a sample set in a given area based on flood source. And using that sample set, he did an analysis of what the damage would be when floodwaters came up. Based on that height, what would the damages be? Using that analysis, we initially had a 50-year floodplain throughout the entire parish. So that initial run 2 years ago had 8,500 structures in the non-structural plan. And it was a 50-year floodplain for the entire parish, whether it was coastal or riverine. In the revised draft, we identified structures on a variety of floodplains, the 25, the 50, and the 100, and we separated those based on flood source. So what you'll see in the next slide is 6,500 eligible purple dots. All of those purple dots indicate a structure that will be addressed in the tentatively selected plan. So you can see the colors, the groupings are flood source. If you're looking at the western part of St. Tammany, you're looking at flooding from the Little Tchefuncte River. If you're looking at the Madisonville lakefront, you're looking at flooding not only from the river, but also from storm surge from Lake Pontchartrain. The Eden Isle area is going to be storm surge largely from Lake Pontchartrain. You'll also see that large gap with no coloring behind it. That levee is protecting that area from storm surge. There would be no structural raises behind the levee. And this is just a brief summary of the environmental impacts. When we do our analysis, like Sandy talked about, these are the different things that we look at to determine the fitness of the tentatively selected plan. It goes back to that checklist of things. How does this impact the wetlands? How are we impacting essential fish habitat? How are we impacting those threatened and endangered species like the gopher tortoise? It's not always the people environment. Sometimes the animals also play a part. So we did our best in this study to benefit as many homeowners, as many residents and business owners as we could, but we also took into account all of those environmental impacts as well. So our schedule to complete, as you can see, we started in 2020. All of the green are things that we have previously done, including some other public meetings that we came out to the public for. We were in this very room a few times, and then we had some online thanks to COVID. But that big one you see next is the district submittal of the final feasibility report. So we will send our ideas up to our division in Vicksburg, and they will review it for about 5 months, and then they will transmit it to our headquarters. And at that point, our headquarters would hopefully review and sign our chief's report. I'll talk about the chief's report in a second, but these are the public meetings periods we have. As a reminder, we are in the public comment period, and it closes September 6th. Please, please get your comments tonight if you're here, either with our court reporter or with a public comment card. So over the next few months, we're going to take those public comments, we're going to take our agency review comments, we're going to incorporate them into our chief's report, and then we're going to send that chief's report up. Now, chief's report is a large document. Y'all have the draft version available to you, but it's going to the chief of engineers of headquarters, our USACE headquarters. He's a 3-star general, and he'll review it and hopefully sign and approve it. We are anticipating authorization from Congress for construction in Word of 24. And at that point, we will begin more engineering and design on this effort. We are not ready for shovels in the ground at this point. As you can see on the screen, we need 2 different congressional actions, authorization and funding to get to construction. And the very earliest you would see shovels in the ground would be 2027. We would then transfer the project to our non-federal sponsor and close out the federal side. I'm going to turn it back over to Renee. We'll all be in the back to answer as many questions as we can tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Amy. You've heard this over and over again. We need to hear from you. We need your input to make this the best document we can. So just a reminder, we're here again today to hear from you. How do you view this selected plan, this tentatively selected plan? And do you have any modifications or concerns regarding the plan? And we want to hear all the comments, positive and negative. And there's a variety of ways that you can submit your comments. I mentioned it a few times. We have comment cards. A lot of you have those already. You can email your comments in. And we also have a court reporter here who will take your oral statement as well. And regardless of how you submit your comment, all those comments are treated equally. So whether you mail it, email it, give it to the court reporter, it's all treated the same. No one gets any preferential treatment there. So with that, we're going to go ahead and close out this part of the meeting. We have our subject matter experts in the back of the room to take your questions, and we'll be here to answer them. Any questions you may have. If you choose not to and you're heading home now, thank you so much for coming. Be safe, because we got that thing called rain that actually showed up here, and it's still looking pretty nasty out there. So just please be safe as you drive home tonight. Thank you.